In the vast expanse of deep space, where stars twinkle like distant memories of home, humanity's first encounter with alien life wasn't exactly what anyone had expected. The massive Drachnid warship loomed over Earth's orbital defense station like a predator sizing up its prey, its metallic surface reflecting the soft blue glow of our planet below. Commander Vexthor of the Drachnid Empire stood tall on his bridge, his scaled armor gleaming under the harsh artificial lights. His reputation for conquering primitive species preceded him across 3 galaxies. With mandibles clicking in anticipation, he prepared to deliver his ultimate threat to the humans' pathetic defensive fleet. "Attention, Earth vessels," his voice boomed through the interstellar communications. "I come bearing the mightiest weapon in the known universe, a beast so fierce that entire civilizations have surrendered at merely hearing its approach. Prepare yourselves for absolute terror." At that moment, Senior Lieutenant Sarah Chen couldn't help but roll her eyes. After 5 years of serving on the orbital defense station, she'd heard her fair share of dramatic alien monologues. But something about this one felt different. Maybe it was the slight tremor in the alien commander's voice, or perhaps it was the way her coffee mug vibrated on her desk. The station's sensors lit up as a massive containment pod launched from the Drachnid warship. Sarah watched through the reinforced viewport as the pod hurtled toward the station's docking bay. Emergency protocols activated automatically, and security teams rushed to their positions. "This is your last chance to surrender, humans," Commander Vexthor's voice crackled through the speakers again. "Once I unleash this beast, there will be no hope for your species." Sarah stood at the observation deck, surrounded by heavily armed security personnel. The containment pod's door slowly creaked open, releasing a hiss of pressurized air. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Everyone held their breath, fingers hovering over triggers. What emerged from the pod left them all speechless. A small, fluffy creature with oversized ears and a wagging tail bounded out, its tongue lolling happily to one side. It looked remarkably like a golden retriever puppy, except for its shimmering purple fur and the fact that it had 6 legs instead of 4. "Behold your doom," Vexthor declared triumphantly. "The most feared creature in the— Wait, why aren't you screaming in terror?" Sarah couldn't contain herself anymore. She burst out laughing, which only seemed to encourage the alien puppy. It bounded toward her, leaving tiny paw prints of glowing bioluminescent material on the floor. "This is your terrifying beast," she managed between fits of giggles as the creature rolled over, clearly asking for belly rubs. The alien commander's response came through as a confused sputter. But it's a Nexohound, the most fearsome predator from the death worlds of the Sigma Quadrant. It can tear through reinforced steel like paper." The puppy had now wrapped 2 of its middle legs around Sarah's arm, attempting to give her what could only be described as a hug. Its tail wagged so fast it was practically a blur. "I don't understand," Vexthor muttered, watching through the station's cameras. "It's never done this before. It's supposed to be destroying your station, not— Is it actually trying to play fetch with your security officer's plasma rifle?" Little did Commander Vexthor know, this moment would change the course of human-alien relations forever. But as Sarah scratched behind those oversized ears and watched the puppy's eyes close in contentment, she couldn't help but wonder, what other surprises did this supposedly fearsome beast have in store for them? And more importantly, how was she going to explain to Earth's military command that their first line of defense against alien invasion had just adopted an intergalactic puppy? As the alien puppy continued to charm everyone on the station, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this situation than met the eye. The creature's purple fur seemed to shimmer with an almost intelligent gleam, and those golden eyes held a wisdom that no ordinary puppy should possess. "Sir," her second-in-command whispered, "protocol dictates we should contain any alien life form immediately." He nervously watched as the 6-legged puppy now performed what appeared to be a perfectly executed backflip, much to the delight of the security team. "I'm well aware of protocol, Lieutenant Hayes," Sarah replied, maintaining her professional composure despite the puppy now attempting to chase its own multiple tails. "But I think we're dealing with something unprecedented here." Commander Vexthor's voice came through again, this time lacking its previous bravado. This is impossible. The Nexohound was specifically bred for warfare. It comes from a lineage of apex predators that brought entire planetary defense systems to their knees. He paused, and Sarah could have sworn she heard something that sounded suspiciously like papers being frantically shuffled in the background. The puppy, meanwhile, had discovered the station's air recycling vent and was now contentedly making the filter panel hover with its breath, treating it like some sort of game. Each exhale created a soft purple glow that seemed to ripple through the air. Perhaps, Sarah suggested diplomatically, we could discuss this situation over a more direct channel. Your weapon seems more interested in playing than destroying our civilization. As if to emphasize her point, the Nexohound had somehow managed to get its head stuck in an empty snack container, causing several hardened security officers to coo in sympathy. The alien commander's response was delayed, and when it came, it sounded distinctly deflated. This is highly irregular. The breeding facility assured me. They guaranteed. He trailed off, muttering something in his native language that the universal translator tactfully declined to interpret. As Sarah watched the puppy, she noticed something remarkable. Every time it got excited, which was approximately every 30 seconds, the purple glow of its fur intensified and nearby electronic devices seemed to respond. Screens flickered, doors opened and closed, and the station's artificial gravity fluctuated ever so slightly. Commander, she addressed Vexthor, her scientific curiosity piqued. Exactly what capabilities is a Nexohound supposed to have? Before he could answer, the puppy sneezed. The seemingly innocent gesture caused every light in the section to briefly flash rainbow colors, and 3 junior officers found themselves floating a few inches off the ground for several seconds. Fascinating, Sarah murmured, making notes on her tablet. It appears to have some form of electromagnetic manipulation abilities, but instead of using them destructively, she watched as the puppy created tiny aurora-like displays to entertain itself. The silence from the Dracnid warship was telling. Finally, Commander Vexthor spoke, his voice carrying a mix of confusion and embarrassment. There may have been an oversight in the training process, perhaps even a slight miscalculation in the genetic engineering. As if responding to his voice, the puppy's ears perked up, and it began emitting a sound that could only be described as a cross between a purr and a small engine starting. The vibration caused everyone's communication devices to start playing what sounded suspiciously like ancient Earth pop music. Sarah looked at the creature, then at her bewildered crew, and finally at the massive warship still hovering outside. Something told her this was just the beginning of a much bigger story. The question was, had humanity just gained its most powerful ally in the form of an overly affectionate, slightly chaos-inducing space puppy, or was this all part of some larger cosmic joke? While Sarah and her crew were still trying to understand their unusual visitor, the station's alert system suddenly blared to life. Red warning lights bathed the corridors in an ominous glow as Chief Engineer Thompson's voice crackled over the intercom. Lieutenant Chen, we've got multiple incoming vessels. They're not responding to any hails. Through the viewport, Sarah watched as 5 sleek, predatory-looking ships dropped out of hyperspace, their design notably different from the Dracnid warship. The Nexohound, who had been contentedly chewing on a spare maintenance drone, instantly stood at attention, its purple fur bristling with energy. Those markings, Commander Vexthor's voice carried an edge of genuine fear. They're from the Genetic Enhancement Corporation. The ones who, he hesitated, then continued reluctantly, who sold me the Nexohound. They're not exactly what you'd call legitimate businessmen. The puppy began to pace, its 6 legs moving in perfect synchronization as sparks of energy crackled between its fur. The nearby control panels pulsed in rhythm with its movements, and Sarah could have sworn she saw complex equations briefly appearing in the static on the screens. Your attention, orbital defense station and Dracnid vessel. A cold, calculating voice transmitted across all frequencies. We are here to reclaim property code NX789. Any interference will result in immediate hostile action. This specimen was never meant to leave our facility. Sarah looked at the puppy, who was now sitting beside her, its golden eyes fixed on the approaching ships with an intensity that seemed far too intelligent for a simple weapon. She noticed something she hadn't before, a small scar behind its left ear, barely visible beneath the fur, looking suspiciously like a rushed attempt to remove some kind of implant. "They're powering up weapons," Lieutenant Hayes reported, his hands flying over the tactical console. The station's shields hummed to life, but against 5 ships specially designed for corporate warfare, their chances looked grim. Commander Vexthor's massive ship moved into a defensive position alongside the station, surprising everyone. "I may have been deceived about the nature of this creature." His voice carried a note of determination. "But I will not stand by while these criminals threaten both our forces." The Nexohound stood up, its fur now glowing so brightly it was almost blinding. Every piece of technology in the station began to respond to its presence. Computers processed faster, shields strengthened, and weapon systems aligned with unprecedented precision. But instead of the chaos from before, there was a sense of purpose in every fluctuation. Property? Sarah knelt beside the puppy, seeing fear and determination in those intelligent eyes. "No, you're not their property. You're something else entirely, aren't you?" The corporate ships launched their first volley of warning shots, the energy blasts dissipating harmlessly against the combined shields. The Nexohound's ears twitched, and suddenly every screen on the station displayed the same message in pulsing purple text. "Help Prout, not weapon, friend." As the corporate fleet moved into attack formation, Sarah realized they weren't just facing a fight for the station or even for the unusual creature beside her. They were witnessing the beginning of something much bigger. The puppy pressed against her leg, its body humming with barely contained energy, and she knew they were about to discover exactly what a Nexohound could really do when it was fighting not as a weapon, but as a friend. The lead corporate ship powered up its main cannon, its energy signature climbing to dangerous levels. In that moment, time seemed to slow as Sarah, her crew, and even Commander Vexthor waited to see what would happen when you corner something that was engineered to be the ultimate weapon, but chose to be the ultimate friend instead. Just as the corporate vessel's main cannon reached critical charge, something extraordinary happened. The Nexohound's fur began to pulse with complex patterns of light, forming what looked like star charts and navigation coordinates. Suddenly, through the station's viewport, space itself seemed to ripple as dozens of portals began opening around them. Lieutenant Chen, her sensor officer, called out, voice trembling with disbelief, "I'm picking up multiple signatures. They're all Nexohounds." Through each swirling portal emerged more 6-legged puppies, each one unique in its coloring, but all sharing the same intelligent eyes and determined expression as their companion. Some had fur that shimmered like the northern lights. Others seemed to bend light around them like living prismatic crystals. The corporate fleet halted their attack, clearly caught off guard by this development. "This is impossible," the cold voice transmitted again, but now with an edge of panic. "The specimen shouldn't be able to access the quantum communication network. Unless..." The transmission cut off abruptly. Sarah watched in amazement as the newly arrived Nexohounds formed a defensive pattern around the station and the Drachnid warship. Their original friend stood proudly at the front, its fur now displaying what looked like complex battle formations. Commander Vexthor's laughter boomed through the comm system. By the ancient stars, they weren't breeding weapons. They were enslaving a species of natural spacefaring creatures. Look at how they move together, their coordination. This is no manufactured weapon. This is their natural state. The corporate ships began to retreat, but the Nexohounds had other plans. Working in perfect harmony, they created a containment field of pure energy around the hostile fleet. Each puppy contributed to the field, their combined power far exceeding anything the station's sensors could measure. But then something went wrong. The lead corporate ship attempted to force its way through the containment field, causing a massive energy surge. The resulting feedback sent ripples of disruption through all nearby systems. Sarah watched in horror as the station's power grid began to overload, and even the mighty Drachnid warship's shields started to fluctuate dangerously. Their Nexohound friend, the one Sarah had started thinking of as Scout, suddenly looked alarmed. The patterns in its fur changed to what appeared to be warning signals, and all the other Nexohounds responded with visible concern. Through the station's computers, a new message appeared. Danger. Containment field unstable. Quantum cascade imminent. What's a quantum cascade? Lieutenant Hayes asked, but his question was answered by the sight of space itself beginning to fracture around the corporate ships, creating spider web patterns of reality-bending energy. Commander Vexthor's voice carried genuine fear. If those fractures spread, they could tear apart the fabric of space-time in this entire sector. We need to evacuate immediately. But Scout stood firm, its eyes fixed on the growing chaos. More messages flashed across the screens. Cannot EVHCU-8 must contain. Need help. Trust. Sarah looked at her crew, at the Drachnid warship that had somehow become their ally, and at the army of space puppies trying to prevent a disaster. The corporate ships were now trapped in their own making, their weapons and engines only making the quantum cascade worse with each attempt to escape. Scout turned to Sarah, its golden eyes meeting hers with an unmistakable question. Whatever the puppy was planning, it needed their help, human and Drachnid alike. But as the fabric of space continued to tear around them, one thing became crystal clear. They had mere moments to make a decision that could affect not just their lives, but the very structure of reality itself. In that critical moment, Sarah made her decision. All power to the shields, she commanded, and redirected through the main deflector array, exactly where Scout tells us. Her crew moved with practiced precision, trusting their lieutenant's judgment even as reality itself seemed to bend around them. Commander Vexthor's voice rang through the chaos. The Drachnid Empire stands with you. His massive warship moved into position, its energy systems synchronizing with the station's. The Nexohounds organized themselves into a complex geometric pattern, their fur pulsing in unified waves of ethereal light. Scout bounded to the station's main control panel, its paws dancing across the interface. Complex quantum equations appeared on every screen, far beyond anything human or Drachnid scientists had ever conceived. Through the station's systems, Scout communicated its plan. They would use the combined power of both ships, channeled through the Nexohound's natural ability to manipulate space-time, to contain and then reverse the cascade. The corporate ships, now realizing the magnitude of what they'd unleashed, had fallen silent. The quantum fractures had engulfed their vessels completely, creating a mesmerizing but terrifying display of reality torn apart. Synchronizing power output now, Sarah announced, her hands steady on the controls despite the gravity fluctuations around them. Whatever you're going to do, Scout, do it fast. The Nexohound army began to glow with an intensity that forced everyone to shield their eyes. Scout stood at the center of their formation, its fur pattern shifting to display what looked like the fundamental code of the universe itself. The combined energy of the station and the Drachnid warship flowed through their network, transforming into something entirely new. Just when it seemed the quantum cascade would tear everything apart, Scout let out a sound, not a bark or a howl, but a pure note that seemed to resonate with space-time itself. The other Nexohounds joined in, their harmonics creating a symphony that bent reality back upon itself. The corporate ships vanished in a flash of light, but instead of destruction, something miraculous happened. When the light faded, the ships reappeared, transformed into swirling clouds of quantum energy that coalesced into more Nexohounds. The trapped corporate crews emerged unharmed but dazed, their weapons and technology gone. They were Nexohounds all along. Commander Vexthor breathed in amazement. The corporation wasn't just enslaving them. They were transforming them into ships. Scout wagged its tails triumphantly as the newly freed Nexohounds joined their brethren, their fur patterns already beginning to show their natural luminescence. The quantum cascade had been not just contained but transformed, used as energy to reverse whatever process had turned these magnificent creatures into weapons of war. But as the crew began to celebrate, Scout suddenly tensed. Its fur displayed one final message. More coming. Many more. Need permanent solution. Through the viewport, Sarah watched as hundreds more portals began to open, but these weren't reinforcements. They were distress signals from countless other transformed Nexohounds across the galaxy, all reaching out for help. Scout looked up at her with those intelligent golden eyes, and she knew their adventure was far from over. "Well," Sarah said, scratching behind Scout's ears as she addressed both her crew and Commander Vexthor, "I guess this is the beginning of a beautiful alliance. After all, who better to help free an entire species than the very people who were supposed to be their targets?" Commander Vexthor's response came with what could only be described as a chuckle. "Lieutenant Chen, I believe this may be the first time in galactic history that an invasion force has turned into a rescue mission." He paused before adding, "And all because someone thought a space puppy was too cute to be a proper weapon of war." Scout's fur rippled with what could only be described as laughter, even as more distress signals filled their sensors. The battle was won, but the war to free all Nexohounds was just beginning, and this time they would face it together, as the most unlikely team the galaxy had ever seen. In the weeks that followed, Earth's orbital defense station transformed into something unprecedented, an interstellar rescue and rehabilitation center for liberated Nexohounds. The once sterile corridors now sparkled with the multicolored glow of dozens of space puppies, each one gradually remembering their true nature after being freed from their technological prisons. Sarah found herself promoted to Commander of Interspecies Relations, a position created specifically to handle their unique situation. She spent her days coordinating rescue missions with Commander Vexthor, who had enthusiastically volunteered the Drachnid Empire's resources to help track down and free more transformed Nexohounds. Scout, now officially recognized as the station's chief strategic advisor, much to the amusement of Earth's military bureaucrats, had become an expert at detecting the unique quantum signatures of its transformed kin. Its fur patterns had become a new form of universal translation, helping bridge the communication gap between humans, Drachnids, and the growing community of freed Nexohounds. "You know," Lieutenant Hayes remarked one day, watching a group of Nexohounds teaching younger security officers about quantum physics through an elaborate game of fetch, "when I joined the Space Force, I never imagined I'd be taking advanced theoretical mathematics lessons from a six-legged puppy." The station's science team had made remarkable discoveries about Nexohound biology. Their ability to manipulate quantum fields wasn't just natural. It was essential to their species' survival. Their playful behavior, once dismissed as a malfunction by the corporation, was actually their way of maintaining the delicate balance of space-time itself. The corporate executives, now facing charges in both human and Drachnid courts, had inadvertently revealed something profound. Their attempt to weaponize the Nexohounds had nearly destabilized the very fabric of the universe. Nature, it seemed, had its own way of maintaining order, through the joyful play of space puppies. Commander Vexthor, who now regularly docked at the station for what he called strategic planning sessions, but everyone knew were really just elaborate games of cosmic fetch, had become the biggest advocate for Nexohound rights in Drachnid space. His fearsome warship often arrived carrying toys and treats from across the galaxy, much to the delight of their growing population of rescued friends. As Sarah completed her daily log, Scout bounded into her office, its fur displaying excited patterns about a new rescue mission. 3 more corporate facilities had been located, and preliminary scans suggested at least 24 transformed Nexohounds needed their help. "Ready for another adventure?" she asked, already knowing the answer. Scout's response was to create a miniature aurora borealis that danced across her ceiling, spelling out "always." The station's alert system chimed, not with warning this time, but with the now familiar signal of another rescue mission beginning. As Sarah headed to the command center, she reflected on how one small moment of compassion had changed the course of galactic history. The universe's most fearsome weapon had turned out to be its greatest protector, all because someone took the time to see past appearances and trust their heart. Scout fell into step beside her, its 6 paws moving in perfect rhythm, fur glowing with plans and strategies for their next mission. Behind them, a chorus of happy barks echoed through the station as more Nexohounds prepared to help their kin, The feared invasion of Earth had become something else entirely. A revolution of kindness that was spreading across the stars, one rescued space puppy at a time. As they reached the command center, Sarah smiled at the sight of human and drachnid crews working seamlessly alongside their Nexohound allies. Sometimes, she realized, the greatest victories come not through force or fear, but through understanding and friendship. And somewhere out there, more of Scout's family was waiting to be found, waiting to be reminded that they weren't weapons at all. They were the guardians of the galaxy's greatest treasure, its ability to bring unlikely friends together.